First I'll introduce myself a bit. So you know who is bringing this information to you. Again, my name is Jennifer Castro, and I am a licensed master of social work here at Eden's Counseling Group. Today we will be talking about the not so terrible teenage years. And I chose this title because I think oftentimes we can, parenting can get a little overwhelming, especially when it comes down to parenting teens. And so I hope that today can be informative. I hope that it can provide a little bit of insight. Today we will be going over, oh, it says loading. Let's see. Sorry, I just got the information that you guys cannot see my screen. Let me see. Courtney, if you could just let me know if and when you can see it.
Okay. Right now, what I see is you're wanting to share the parenting presentation on Google Slides, but it just says loading. So if you want to try to share that with us one more time.
Sure, yes. Let me see. Sorry, guys, this is oh, okay. Okay, let's see. Let me see here.
There we go.
Perfect. Okay, I apologize for that. And let me jump right back into what I was saying. Okay, so again, my name is Jennifer Castro. Today we will be talking about parenting teenagers, and my hope for this talk today, or for this presentation today, is that we can go over some of the basic thoughts and ideas around how to parent in such a way where we are able to foster connection with teens. We will lightly touch on some of the more challenging things that teens go through, but today will not be a day where we do a deep dive on things like identity or substance abuse and things like that. Although, we do know that teens are definitely in a time frame where they are exploring, and so we will lightly touch on those things. But if you have questions about those kinds of things outside of that, we'll have time and space for some questions and answers at the end. But today we're just going to go over just fostering and building connection and care with them. So let us get started. I just want to let you all know that each month Edens does a presentation just like this, and we call them Focus on Wellness. So they're free monthly webinars that we provide for a series of variety of mental health topics. And so I hope you will join us for our talk again next month. All right, so let's just jump right on in. As I mentioned, we are talking about fostering a healthy relationship with your teen. And so today we're thinking about all age groups from 12, probably all the way to 18, 19. And we'll be talking about the teenage brain, setting realistic expectations for yourself and for your teen, and building trust, which helps your teen when they need it most, but also helps you along the way throughout this parallel process. And just creating a relationship that you would want to continue having with your teen throughout their young adult life and their adult life, hopefully. So getting started and jumping right in, we are going to discuss the teenage brain. And so I have a question for you all, and that is, who all has heard? You could drop it in the chat. You can put your little, maybe even emojis or anything to make it fun, but who all has heard of the frontal lobe? And I wonder if social media and TikTok has been making that run a little bit more rampant lately. I feel like people are actually talking about this now, and it is something that kind of excites me, if you will. And I say that because one thing that we know about teenage brains is that they are still developing. And so what that means is what a lot of people are maybe not super aware of is that a teen's frontal lobe is actually not fully developed until maybe around 25 or for men and 27 for women. So I think that sometimes people think that, once they're about 16, 17, they should be making wiser choices. They should know better. These are common things I hear in therapy sessions and such. So I've worked with families and teens for quite some time. I've been in the mental health field for about 12 years. And I used to work with young adults who were needing to launch. And so oftentimes they would come into the step down program where we would help them get into school, work, volunteering, et cetera, and help them while they were maybe navigating like more complicated or so like maybe they were severely depressed, or maybe they had like anxiety to the point where they were unable to leave the house. And so it was like these big feelings and things that they were having that would make life a little bit more challenging. So part of my role was to help them navigate life in these ways. But so throughout this time, I've worked with parents and I've worked with teens and I've worked with young adults. And one thing that I've seen over and over again is the parents' expectation that the teens should know better, they should be doing better, they should um, just be able to make wiser choices than they're actually making. And sometimes that is true, and sometimes that is not true. And that is just simply because your brain, your teenager's brain is still it's still growing, it's still doing its thing, it's still catching up to its body, if you will. So you may have a teenager who looks really mature, or maybe looks more adultish than not, but their brain is still kind of just playing catch up. And so what this means is the frontal lobe is a part of our brain that is the part of our brain that makes decisions. And so this can cause your teen or even young adult, right, to have difficulty holding back or controlling emotions, a high preference for high excitement, exploration, and new activities, inadequate planning and limited judgment, and more risky and impulsive behaviors. And I think the one that we all feel a little bit more frightened by is the risky and impulsive behaviors, right? So that can mean like your teen might think it's really fun to speed and race their friends on the highway, or this is also one of the parts of the brain that might say, hey, let us skip school and go with our friends and maybe experiment with vaping or something along that line, right? So this is the part of the brain that is responsible for helping us to make really big and important decisions, and it's also the part of the brain that sometimes will not allow us to do so. And so I read this quote as I was doing research for this, and it said, until your teen's brain is your frontal, until their frontal lobe is fully developed, you have to be their frontal lobe for them. I thought that was kind of interesting because I thought if only we could do that. So we may not be able to do that, but we are responsible as parents for trying our best to help our child and help our teen make good decisions. And I think there also has to be grace in knowing that that may not always be possible. But we're there to provide safety nets in the event that we are able to do that. So evolutionary psychologists suggest that adolescence emerged as a period during which young humans built the social networks which they would need to thrive. And the key to that process is bonding with peers. and responding to their influence, which often involves proving loyalty by taking risks. And so I'm sorry, I'm reading these notes, but I wanted to make sure that I read that part and said it out loud because um, the teenage, we also, as anybody who has teenagers know, their peers are just so important to them at this point in time, right? So we all know that um, this is a time where, as much as you want to help them make these big, wise decisions or even these everyday decisions, the part of their brain that is doing all of this is really saying, my friends probably know a little bit more than my parents. And while that may not be true, they just have such a huge impact on your teen at this point in time. And I just would like to point out that that's very normal. So it's a really normal experience for your teen to be looking towards their peers who are all in this parallel process of trying to find themselves during this time. So what can we do, or what do we think about this, and what does this mean for us as parents who might be needing to adjust as our teens adjust? We have to adjust, and so one of those is adjusting to what we call autonomy. And autonomy is pretty much the self-governing part of us, right? Autonomy refers to one's ability to grow, think, feel, make decisions, and act on his or her own. Um, it is also the part where we think of independence, or where they are learning self-determination, learning how to just think for themselves, right? I sometimes think that when parents hear the term of like letting go, or um, losing a little bit of like control over teens, or maybe like, once they hit that age, they're kind of looking to become a young adult. They're looking to become a little bit more of their own person. And so that is part of what autonomy is. And caregivers can sometimes threaten that autonomy when there's too much of a need for over controlling. So today we are going to talk a little bit about the consequences of over controlling and what that can do to your teen. Let's see. But before we get there, we're going to talk a little bit more about building trust. And so in the comment box, just let us know, do you feel that you and your teen have a good relationship when it comes to trust? Do you think that your teen can trust you? And do you think that you can trust your teen? So let us know in the chat box. But so the balance between keeping our teens safe and letting them explore young adulthood comes in this matter of trust. And how can we really do that, right? I think that's a really loaded question of how can we truly build trust when teens are in a place where they are probably testing limits, doing new things that may feel scary, especially for parents, and things like that. So I think this goes back to the autonomy piece, right? If we can, as parents, support exploration and individuality, we're helping build trust. If we can validate our youth's opinions, even when adults may disagree, we are fostering trust. So by acknowledging your teen's perspective and emotions, we are allowing them to use their voice. We're allowing them to be who they are. I think one of the most common things I see, especially in the therapeutic process, is that sometimes parents are so well-meaning, because part of what they want to do is make sure that their child is just going in the right direction, if you will, making sure that they are not engaging in things that are too risky, right? Which goes back to being like the frontal lobe for them and whatnot. But also sometimes we can do that to a point where we are just not allowing them to be their own person. So some other ways we can do that is by encouraging your teen to problem solve and make decisions for themselves, asking open-ended questions. What does that mean? Open-ended questions are questions that are a little less, I think one of the defaults that we all go to is, how was your day? How was your day? Is, I guess technically it's still an open-ended question, and you're like allowing them to just say how their day was, but it's almost like a question that has an agenda behind it, right? You're just kind of asking like, how was school? What was that like? So if you can ask a little bit more like questions that are really getting to know your child, right? Or your teen rather, really getting to know who they are. If sometimes that has nothing to do with school at all. And I think we can all get really boggled down by, um, you know, how was school? How was extracurriculars, whether that be like, how was practice, or did you go to practice? Were you there on time? Who were you with? Those kind of questions, they really just do not foster connection, right? And so when we're thinking about trust, we're thinking about connection. We're thinking about how can we really truly get to know this beautiful young adult that we are helping to raise, and who we get to love on and who we get to see um, grow from one side of the spectrum to the other, in terms of, you were just a baby and now you are a young adult and you're going off and exploring, but who are you really? And how can I foster that? How can I nurture who you truly are? So asking open-ended questions about their interests are more likely to help you gain trust. And when you have trust from your teen, they are more likely to come to you in times of distress. And so, one of the things that I just didn't have the space to put here, was to be a teammate, to be someone who, I think in times of when we are moving towards, how do I say this? When we're moving in a general direction of into teenhood, one of the things that parents probably have to almost radically accept is that, because this is a new, just like when you had, sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but when you had your child and they were a baby, you had to adjust from toddlerhood to, childhood, right? Like then every time you're adjusting, and it's the same thing when they become teens. We have to adjust. And I think one of the hardest things I see is that parents are just like not able to, oh, I am so sorry, are not able to adjust to like the need of coaching. I am so sorry, y'all. What is happening here? Okay, to the need for coaching and being a teammate versus being someone who is more of like an air controller, if you will. But that is super, super, super important at this time. And why is that? That is because at this point in time, your teen is going to be in risky situations, is going to do the exploring, is going to be in places and spaces where you will not. And the hope is that if you're able to build trust, and if you're able to gain their respect in that type of way, then when they are in a place of needing your help or needing your assistance, then they would be able to call you. So you always kind of want them to be able to feel safe with you versus feeling like, oh, I don't want my parents to find that out. And that is a tricky balance. It's really hard. But in terms of being able to have the type of relationship you want to have with your child long term, that is super, super important. So let's see. Another thing that we would want to do is, while building trust, is to role model healthy decisions and behaviors. And that, I guess, is probably the best way we can build trust with our young adults, because when they see who you are and they see your ability to be vulnerable, your ability to know boundaries, know limits, your ability to follow through. Those are all ways to help build trust. And then also we have establishing clear and consistent expectations that are age appropriate. So again, there goes to that part of adjusting, right? Adjusting to what is now age appropriate. It might be the time to start, depending on their age, to start allowing them to have extra curfew time or allowing them to be with friends a little longer, those kinds of things. But the most important part is to be clear and consistent about what those are, and to make sure that you are staying true to whatever boundaries you're putting in place. Because if you're okay with something at one point, but then you kind of like waver on another day, then they're just going to say, well, mom and dad will waver, or anybody, grandma, grandpa, aunt, uncle, whoever you may be to them, your care as a caretaker. If they waver, then it's almost like let's say they know that they can bend the rules a little bit more. But if you don't, then they know what my loved one says, they mean, and they'll do. So let's see, we are going to move forward, but also I have on here independence, I see. And so that goes along with, I think at this point, we have already established that independence is, I think we talked about that actually, but just to discuss it a little further, we are just allowing, at this age, right, between, it depends, because we're in 12, I think we've started 12, 13, and then we're like 18, 19. So we're kind of in a big age group of what independence really looks like. But we should be thinking that at this age group, allowing more independence when it comes to doing chores, maybe not taking over tasks for them, allowing them extra time with, family and friends, letting them make the decisions about their extracurriculars, decor of their bedroom, even like hairstyle choices and things like that, choice of music. These are all things that can help them foster independence. If it's time for, if they're working and if they're driving, these are things that of course can be a little bit scary, but it's important that we allow them to explore these things on their own without having to kind of take over too much. This can also mean doing things like paperwork. Sometimes it can be really, we might just want to jump in and do it ourselves. Oh, let me do it. Oh, I'll do this, and really, it's really important for us to allow our children to do it. And if they fail, that's okay. We're going to talk a little bit more about the failure piece here in a minute, but before we jump into that, we're going to talk a little bit about perfectionistic parenting. Let's see. So I really wanted to kind of touch base on this because I've noticed a lot in sessions recently or over the past year, especially a lot of echoing sentiments about parents who really have very, very well-meaning expectations for their children, but may at sometimes not realize how hard it might be for the child to also experience very all or nothing thinking. So the term perfectionism really comes from it's less about being perfect and more about needing things to be done a certain way. Because as we all know, there is no such thing as being perfect, right? There's just, someone is always going to be better. Someone is always going to do things a bit more efficiently. There's always going to be, there's no such thing as perfect or perfection. But yet we still have plenty of people who will strive for that. And while that is okay, and again, very well meaning, this type of parenting can really lead to all or nothing thinking. And what this really kind of leads your child to feel usually would be feelings of inadequacy or feelings of not being enough, feeling very misunderstood, very overlooked. Oftentimes, this is coming from, again, a parent might think, well, I'm just pushing you to be your best, or I just want you to be the best that you can be. And unfortunately, this kind of thought can really lead you to for mistrust and ruptures in your relationship with your child. And ruptures are something we think of when the relationship becomes, you know, you might have an argument or a fight, and after this happens, you are unable to connect the way you were before, and maybe it also leads to mistrust. So again, we think about modeling behavior, and one way we can model the opposite of perfectionism is to be okay with things not being completely perfect, with things being just okay. So yes, maybe, I think it's also really important to love your child the way they are versus like loving the child for who you think they should be. Um, I think that's a big one. And I say that because sometimes maybe you have a parent who has really excelled, and they come from a family who excels quite a bit, and there is a certain expectation to be a certain um, a certain type of in a certain type of career path or something, which maybe, oh, you need the best GPA you can get, or you need, um, don't go for this career because that's not good enough, or why do that when you can be XYZ or something like that. So again, this is just while it's all very well meaning, it can really cause your child to have a lot of self-doubt. And so one of the things that we are thinking about when we are thinking about helping a teen is we're thinking about soon they will launch, right? If you're doing your job well, soon they will launch. And the hope is that your child will launch successfully, that they will launch, whether that means that they go to college or that means that they go to work. It may or may not mean they leave the nest right away, but what it would mean is that they are being a productive citizen. They are, working towards financial goals. They are understanding what finances are. They are understanding how to do their own chores, and they are ready for the real world, right? Like that's what we're trying to get them ready for. But if we are constantly placing our own values upon them, our own thoughts, our own ideas, and not letting them explore that for who they truly are, we are really doing a disservice to them. So, but as I mentioned several times, this comes from usually what it seems like a good place. And so we're going to talk about when should I be concerned? Like, when should I really be concerned for my child? Because I'm not quite sure, right? Like I see other teens doing this, and I just want to make sure that I am not letting my teen get too far away. Okay. Let's see. So we are going to look at what is typical and what is not typical. So a couple of things. Increased moodiness is definitely very typical for your teen. No matter what age they are hitting a puberty level. They have hormones that are raging through their bodies. They're tired, and they are going through lots and lots of things with their peer group. They are managing school. They're doing all kinds of things. Moodiness is to be expected. When is it a cause for concern? It's a cause for concern when they are engaging in much more risky behavior, when they are mood dependent behavior, major depression, panic attacks, self-injury, or suicidal ideation, or the acts of acting upon suicidal ideation. So any time that they may be trying to complete suicide or have overdose or things like that. These are when it's time to be concerned, right? This is when you do want to reach out for, maybe you reach out to a therapist, or maybe you look for other type of help, whether that be like, especially if it's some sort of acting upon suicidal ideation, then you would want to, look for maybe even hospitalization at that point, depending on if that was needed at the time. However, it is to be expected that teens will be moody. Increased parent-adolescent conflict. That is also to be expected. So yes, it is very normal for your child, for your teen to talk back, to be disrespectful, to not listen to what you're saying because they just are in that point where they, again, back to the frontal lobe, they are not fully developed and they are going to be in this place at these points in times. And that's okay. That is normal. When it's not normal, it's verbal or physical aggression and running away. I think that it's really important for us to note, I want to note something. If if your teen is running away, that is a cause for concern. And I say, oh, okay, sorry. I say that because children typically do not run, or teens, anyone does not run away from a loving, healthy home. If your child is running away, that is usually a very like red flag for you to know something is not right here and something needs to be changed. What that is, it would look different for everybody, but this is when you have cause for concern. Again, that might be the time to look for a therapist, or to look for, maybe if it's physical aggression, look for some type of anger, outlets for anger management and things like that. Experimentation with drugs, alcohol, or vaping is typical. We can expect that they are hanging out with their peers. They are in a place where they are taking more risks. They're trying to see what's out there. They're trying to be cool. They are trying to just fit in, and peers are everything to them at this moment. So of course we can expect that this is going to happen. And how can we not be super alarmed to the point where we are throwing trust out the window with them, right? When that happens, we would hope that they, even if they experimented, they could come and they could tell you about this happening without a big explosive response. If you do have a big explosive response, they're less likely to tell you about these things in the future. And so they may continue to engage in it and just not tell you about it. So you definitely, if your child is sharing that this is going on with their peer group or that it's happening, the best thing you can do is to be patient with them and normalize the experience. When is it a cause for concern? Well, if they keep doing it, I mean, if you are here and you're a good safety net for them, and you're able to be a sounding board for them, the hope is that they would not continue to engage in this, because they're coming to you and they're saying, I had this experience, it wasn't very great, I didn't like it, I don't know what to do, here's what my peer group is doing. And then you can share some of your own experiences with boundaries, of course, with limits, but you're able to kind of let them know this is normal, that's okay, but here's what's not normal. What's not normal is when it becomes substance abuse, where they become dependent upon this type of behavior, when they are doing it too much, when it's interfering with school, when all of these things are happening. If it were to get into a point where they're hanging out with people who are selling drugs, or they themselves are selling drugs, or they are just always with a peer group that is always abusing substances, that's when this is a cause for concern. You definitely want to steer them away. And hopefully, them hanging out with this type of group would be mitigated early on. We can also be sure that increased sexual maturation is happening, sexual interest or experimentation is also going to happen, and that would be normal. What isn't normal? Sexual promiscuity, multiple partners, unsafe sexual practices, and pregnancy. So the last two, I really want to kind of point out that the best thing you can do to help your children in this time and space, to help your teens in this time and space, is to have really open, honest conversations very early on about both drugs and sex. If you're able to have these conversations, especially, like studies show that if you have conversations about sex early on, and if you normalize the experience for them, and you are able to tell them about, how to have safe sex, what that looks like, that typically helps teens to have fewer partners and to have safer sex. So it may even help them to abstain a little longer than if you were to just, one, not talk about it, or two, make it a shameful talk, right? So the whole thing about drugs and sex, or drugs, alcohol, all of these things, even if it's something like online social media, and then sexting or things like that, if you can be the one to be the one who is early on talking about these things often, like a lot, then they are less likely to get this information from their peers. They're less likely to engage in it. They're more likely to come to you when they are thinking that this is something that they want to engage in. And so that's how you can help them mitigate these bigger things that are bound to happen. So things to be on the lookout for. What to be on the lookout for if you have a teen and they are just in a place and space where you're like, well, I don't know, this is just how my teen is this normal? Changes in sleep patterns. So too much or too little sleep. If someone is not sleeping enough, that is a cause for concern. If they are sleeping too little and they're sleeping a lot, that's a cause for concern, right? So if they come home and they just go straight to bed and then they sleep all day until it's time to go to school the next day, it is likely that they are depressed. If they are not sleeping at all and you notice that they're always up at night and their sleep cycle is super off, that is also cause for concern. Changes in appearance, especially if it's radically changing, all of a sudden you see that they are, dressing differently, they're doing their makeup very different, their hair is completely changed, or any type of other like altering of their appearance, and especially if it's just a radical change, is something to be on the lookout for. Dramatic changes in eating and hygiene. Again, too much or too little. So if they're eating way too much, that might be, hey, start to ask questions. If you see that they are not brushing their teeth, not washing their face, not really doing any of this, or they're doing it in an excessive amount. So on one opposite end, right, we might have, like if they are not taking care of themselves, you might have depression. And on the other opposite end, if it was we're thinking about maladaptive behaviors, right? So behaviors that are just like too much or too little. So if on the other end, they might have, might be concerned with body image, right? So we might be thinking about body dysmorphia or things like that. Resistant behavior around schoolwork. So let's say that, your teen used to always do their work and now all of a sudden they are just not interested. There could be something going on at school. So again, asking open-ended questions, not asking like, hey, what's going on at school, but asking questions about their friends, asking questions about what they enjoy at school, or what they just enjoy in their day-to-day life. And if they're not able to kind of give you anything, that's, again, it's something to just be on the lookout for. Drops in grades and interests. If they lose all interest, if suddenly they had tons of interest and then they do not have interest anymore, again, we might be thinking about depression. We might be wondering if this is a sign that they may be depressed. More irritable than usual. That's again, we talked about how they would probably already be pretty irritable, but this is more irritable than usual, more than they are already irritable, if that makes sense. Isolation and separation. And this goes back to the maybe sleeping too much or just kind of being in their room and never coming out, never wanting to be around family or friends, not being with friends, cause for concern. A rapid switch in routine or switch in friend groups, or maybe having friends and then no longer having friends. These are when I'm going to go back to the slideshow, but these are, again, it falls in the cause for concern, and some of these things may be happening, right? So some of those things might be that we mentioned in the slide that we just saw. It might be that it might be a telltale sign that they might be considering running away if there's something going on at home, or maybe that they have major depression, or maybe that they are starting to engage in substance abuse. Maybe they are experiencing whatever it might be, at school or with their peer groups. So these are things that should raise red flags for you. And so with that being said, again, that sounds all really, really scary. And what we were just talking about, I think, is usually where parents' heads, like where our minds go first and foremost. Like, oh my gosh, the teen is engaging in all of these things. They go to school and they have access to all of these. They have access to drugs and alcohol. They have access to, what if they're starting to have sex, or what if they want to have sex with their boyfriend, girlfriend, or partner, or whomever. And there's so many fears that come around from that, and I think that's just completely normal. And so one of the things that I like to talk about is uncertainty. And so how can we as parents be comfortable with being uncertain of what's to come? And I know that sounds a little funny, because why would we want to be uncertain when it's something as big as our child? But sometimes we just don't know. Sometimes parenting is messy, and more often than not, that's what it is. More often than not. And who all here feels that way? Like, just again, drop in the chat, leave us a little emoji, let me know yes or no, this is how I feel, because I would probably guess that almost every parent feels that on a daily basis, where sometimes we just don't know if we're doing the best job we can, if we're doing you know the a disservice to our child or not. But usually we're doing a better job than we think. And so one of the common challenges parents face, and at least in my experience, especially when I'm doing family work, and I see this with going on, is that sometimes we have our own fears and insecurities about, and anxieties about, what parenting is, how we're doing as a parent, what we used to do as a child, and what we don't want our child to engage in. And, well, I remember when I was this age and I was doing that, and I don't want my child to do that because that ruined my life for the past blah 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 years, or whatever, right? Like, these kinds of things can lead us to projecting our own experiences onto our children, and can like oftentimes feel really icky for the child to experience, right? It can feel really disarming for the child, if you would. So how can we allow our teens to fail? And what does failure really mean? I think I mentioned that early on in the chat, right? And as we were talking, failure is really something your child needs, your teen needs, to help them learn much needed problem solving skills. And so when we're thinking about your child, again, going back to launching and thinking about how can we truly help them versus enabling them. Helping is when you help a person who maybe doesn't have all the resources that they need in that moment, or doesn't have like any other, there's a difference between helping and enabling. And I think oftentimes what parents might do is enable a child's behavior. And then it's almost like, if you engage in enabling behavior, where you're doing things for them, not allowing them to kind of do it on their own, fail, make the mistake, and then pick themselves back up and do it again until they get it right. If you're doing it for them, if you're always constantly rescuing um, and there to be. I want us all to be safety nets, but not to the point where they're not able to kind of launch and fly on their own, right? So there is a fine line there. But when we think about rescuing, we think that rescuing often leads to resentment, because you might say, gosh, I've done this for you so many times. Why can't you just do it on your own? Why are you not able to do this? Didn't you see the first few times? Or how come why are we talking about this again? And that is what we think of when we're thinking of resentment. So it's oftentimes the way to avoid that is to allow your child to go out and figure it out on their own. And of course, we still want safety nets. We still want them to know you're there. We still want them to know that in case of an emergency, I can call my loved one and they will be there. But we also want them to be able to kind of experience failure on their own. I kind of like this quote. It said, when you don't support all your teens' choices, like the blue hair or the class they decided to take, or the activity that they decided to quit, remember that letting them make as many as possible, mistakes, I guess, will be the glue that keeps your relationship intact. When parenting teens, we let go to hold on and watch as our babies start to take flight. It may not be the route you suggested, but take comfort in knowing that you taught them to fly. And I just really love that because I think it's super important that we allow our children to take flight, because that is truly the ultimate goal. When we are allowing them to become their own individual, when we're allowing them to say, no, this is what I would really love to do with my life, even if we think that, hey, you know what, there's no money in that, or that's not, you can do better, or whatever. It's just not, it's ultimately not helping them become who they truly are. So how can we love them for who they truly are? How can we connect with them and know and really get to know this unique individual that you have helped love and raise and watch grow? And how can you continue to foster that? You can continue to foster that by truly allowing them to be themselves. So I thank you for being with me throughout this talk. I'm going to leave some space for questions, and I thank you for your time with me. This is truly it. I'm going to leave this here. Again, my name is Jennifer Castro. I am a licensed a master of social work. I join you with 12 years of experience in the mental health field, and I have worked with young adults throughout my career. It's something I truly, truly enjoy. So if you have any questions, please let me know. And also, if you need any more information, I'll leave this here. You can call or text our group. And if you would like to do any type of consultation, I am happy to do that with you as well. So thank you so much for your time. And if you also need to contact me, you can contact me at jennifercastro@edenscounseling.com. And as for that, that is it. And I will take some questions. Let's see, Courtney, by chance, do you have any questions?
I haven't seen any questions being brought into the chat just yet.
Okay.
I
I
do
see.
have someone that said the biggest challenge is getting their attention to allow time for coaching when their peers have access to them 24/7.
Yeah, I think that is really hard. One, I guess if I could say anything towards that, it's that then the best thing you can do is whenever they are around you, whenever you do have their time, to make that time as meaningful as possible. So, and it doesn't mean that you cater to their like every need or whim, right? But it would mean kind of being very intentional about the way you spend your time. So it might mean putting away phones. It might mean doing something like maybe that is nostalgic to something you guys did when they were younger, a younger child, or something that they may love now. Maybe it's something that you don't love so much, but if you engage in it with them, then they're more likely to spend some time with you outside of that. But it is a hard time because they are with their peers and they are kind of like, yeah, I'm with peers, I don't bye. So um the hope is that you can start doing those things pretty early on, and the younger they are, the easier it is. But just be patient and try your best to make it as meaningful as possible.
There's another question here, Jennifer. Can you give some examples of open-ended questions?
Yes. So as long as it can't be answered with like yes or no, I did say, oh, how was your day? Which is, I guess it is open-ended, but so yeah, an open-ended question would be like, um, let's see, I'm going to actually pull some up because there's some great ones. Another thing I'll do is will I will send some of these links. I have books. I have a list of books for you all that and a podcast, and I'll also send maybe some of these open-ended questions for you. But here is an example. What do you like the most about your best friend? That gives them, that's a great question because then they're able to share something about somebody they really enjoy. They really enjoy this person. Um, and it's open-ended. You're giving them the ability to kind of like, share you know, share what they really think about that person. Or if you're like, let's see, what did you find most interesting or surprising about to like what was the most interesting thing that happened to you today at school, versus like asking like how was school, which it's like what was exciting, what wasn't, and they might still come back and say nothing exciting happened today, or nothing was interesting, and they might just shut it down. But if you continue to say like you're continuing to probe with questions that are a little bit more about getting to know what like a rich experience of what their life is like, that is helpful. I hope that helps, but I'm going to try to, I'll give you one more example and then I'll send some in the email. Let me see, a direct question, let's see, no. Hmm. um Maybe asking, like, let's say someone asked earlier what to do if you don't have that much time. Um, and then let's say you do spend time together. Then at the end of it, you could say, what was the best part of our time together today? And then allowing them, not just like, oh, did you have fun? Right? Like, oh yeah, I had fun, or yeah, whatever, right? If you're like, what was the best time, or what was the most enjoyable part of today that we spent together today, then they might say, oh, I really loved when we played whatever game together. Maybe it's or I really loved when we just got coffee together or something like that. Those kinds of things can lead to open-ended, it leads to better conversation. And also there are games that you guys can get. There's lots of games that you can find on Amazon now, or you can find
Apologies, everyone. We've seemed to have lost Jennifer just due to some technical difficulties. But we are at our time for today, and this definitely will be posted in a few weeks on our website if you would like to be able to review this again. And of course, if you have any questions, you can definitely contact our office by email or by phone. And if you would like to schedule a consultation with Jennifer, you can also schedule that with our client care team. So we truly appreciate everyone joining us this evening and taking an hour out of your time. And we hope to see you again in our future Focus on Wellness for November and December. So I hope everyone has a great evening.